us today for ANR's 49th anniversary. My name is Cynthia Hallett. I'm President and CEO of Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights and the ANR Foundation. On behalf of the incredible team here at ANR, it's my honor to welcome you to ANR's Day of Breathing. There are over 125 people who have registered to join us for this virtual event. There are 26 states and the District of Columbia represented today. And as some of you may have seen, we have some of our original early members of ANR. You'll hear later about the various our early origins and names of the organization. We have some founding members online. You see Julia Carroll. We have, who was one of our executive directors early on for many, many years. We have colleagues from local government, local level, state, national level, and so many members and donors for which we are very, very grateful for your support and for making time to join us today. We also have representation from people who are working to clear the air from workplaces and living spaces of secondhand smoke. We have casino workers, apartment dwellers, and others who are still struggling to attain the right to breathe smoke-free air. Today, we want to reflect on ANR's beginnings, including accomplishments and milestones, many of which people told us we could never do, and the importance of our grassroots approach and engagement with real people facing the hardships and consequences of secondhand smoke exposure. ANR engages in authentic community engagement to help put a face on this issue and better illustrate who's still being exposed and that everyone deserves the right to breathe smoke-free air. Some highlights of our successes over the last nearly 5 decades include the first smoke-free law in Berkeley, working with flight attendants to achieve smoke-free skies, which we celebrated 35 years of smoke-free domestic flights on February 25th, working with musicians in a number of cities, including Austin, which celebrates 20 years as a smoke-free city in September, New Orleans, which celebrates being smoke-free 10 years in April, Atlanta, which celebrated its 5th smoke-free anniversary in January, and Nashville, which celebrated smoke-free bars and music venues on March 1st. All to ensure that local musicians and people who love music can enjoy the music in a smoke-free, healthy environment. We've also spent time partnering with tribes and tribal health partners, including Navajo Nation and the Air is Life Coalition, which celebrated its 3rd year of a very strong smoke-free regulation on February 2nd. Despite these successes and the enormous amount of evidence about the hazards of secondhand smoke, there are still gaps in smoke-free protections. Let's be clear, the dangers of secondhand smoke are undeniable. According to the US Surgeon General, there is no risk-free level of exposure to secondhand smoke, and ventilation is not a solution to indoor air pollution. Even brief exposure can immediately cause harm to the cardiovascular system, increasing the risk of heart attack. Despite all this evidence and a long history of smoke-free successes, 37% of the population is not protected by a smoke-free workplace, restaurant, and bar law. In addition, we have many workers in casinos. And while 20 states and 2 locations require commercial casinos to be smoke-free, too many casino workers are still working in smoke-filled environment. Much of our work over the last 5 years has been focused on smoke-free casinos in New Jersey, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, Kansas, and others. Casino workers have endured far more than brief exposure to secondhand smoke. They're forced to breathe toxic air daily. Working in smoke-free casinos and in other spaces will remain a priority for ANR in 2025. In addition, we are prioritizing protecting existing smoke-free laws from rollbacks. We currently are facing several attempts to allow for marijuana or cannabis or cigar lounges indoors, in hospitality venues and in airports, which would bring secondhand smoke back into indoor environments. We also face a new round of preemption legislation, which would hamstring localities, a place where we have been extremely successful in innovative smoke-free protections. As we go through our program today, you will hear brief stories from real people and partners about their secondhand smoke exposure and their involvement and collaboration with A&R to advocate for smoke-free environments. We'll celebrate our past, and we're going to outline our path for 2025. Our first speaker is an early member and activist in smoke-free indoor air, and that is Ann Williamson.
Hello, everybody. Good to see you. I'm going to be concentrating now on why I began with gas, Berkeley gas, in the mid-70s. I'd been bothered by cigarette smoke prior to starting to work with the State of California Employment Development Department. However, it began on the wrong foot in a very, very smoky office with cigarettes smoldering in ashtrays while they walked around, with the cigarette in the person's hand walking around. And everybody knows about clothes reeking of cigarette. Well, as a new employee, I thought there wasn't anything I could do about it. And there wasn't anything I could do about it until there was something. I met with the manager of the downtown Oakland office, who said, I'm a non-smoker myself, but my best employees are smokers. I can't ask them to not smoke. And I met with a friend later on who, with me, talked to the manager, who said, among other things, he repeated that. And of course, nothing could be done. As we exited, he said, the door is always open. And she said, the mind is always closed. Right. And that absolutely was true. Well, I did what I could. I tried to get help. My doctor, my wonderful Kaiser doctor, sent notices to the manager. And wonderfully, he set aside 2 rows of desks, absolutely right next to the rows that were smoking, of course. And later on, I was suggested I take a disability retirement. That's another story about the lawyer that I saw who said absolutely not, and who later became a gas donor when I was working in the office. Okay, Cal OSHA, occupational safety and health. No, that's not in our purview. That was a shocking because they were in the same state building. I asked my union, California State Employees Union, for help. Oh no, many of our members are smokers. We can't have that as a policy. So I dropped my union membership and felt guilty about that. Until a year and a half later, I contacted them again, rejoined when a union rep helped me set up a petition in that office that was signed by 75% of the employees signed it. Many smokers who said, this will help me quit. And one of my friends said, this is the only place I can smoke because my family will not let me smoke at home. Were there reprisals? Okay, nothing happened to that petition, of course. No, nothing. Back to the petition. So many people thanked me for doing it, for sending that around. They really appreciate it. But did they take the initiative? No. It takes one person, and one person might generate others. Okay, and as I said, were there any results? No, nothing whatsoever. Were there reprisals? Yes. And there was another very dramatic, traumatic incident regarding Time magazine that I will not go into. That's another 5 minutes. But as a result of that, I was transferred. The union rep said, arbitrarily and capriciously, to many offices, some really smoke filled. I was never promoted. I took and passed three exams. I know I did very well with them. I know I did well on the resulting oral interviews, no promotions. And I lost my permanent civil service status when I requested to be a permanent civil service I'm in permanent part-time working position because by that time, and I had joined GASP and become very active in late 74 or early 1975. By that time, I wanted to be a volunteer in the GASP office in the home of Tim Motor, our executive director. But no, even though other offices had permanent part-time employees, this manager of this office didn't. And of course, he wasn't going to change that policy. So I lost my civil service status. I was on unemployment months. When I was reinstated, I guess they needed bodies. So yes, reprisals. Years later, I'm in the Berkeley High School Career Center funding and locating jobs for students. Here's a young student on my right looking over job offers. Here's me reading the notice from Sacramento headquarters saying no smoking in any state employment office. From then on, I put my head down on the desk and I was crying. And this boy was so alarmed. What happened? I tried to explain. I said, those were tears of I get chills thinking, those were tears of relief. And I realized that this young boy was the beneficiary his whole life of the Berkeley Ordinance, the famous Berkeley Ordinance that we will probably be hearing more about, and probably a lot next year. That was the forerunner of many actions resulting Californians for non-smokers' rights, Americans for non-smokers' rights. Pretty soon, are we going to be international? Non-smokers' rights. The successes that we had then led to A&R successes and continuing work that needs to be done.
Thanks so much, Anne. It is so important that we learn from our past and from history to recognize that when Anne started this work as a brave individual on her own, trying to accomplish the seemingly impossible, first of all, one brave, passionate, driven person can start a movement. And this was back in the day when we didn't want people to smoke at our desks, let alone have 100% smoke-free environments. We've come so far from the early days of the non-smokers' rights movement, where we wanted our desks to be smoke-free in an office, a section of a restaurant. Who would have thought we could get bars? And now we are working on the casinos. Well, our next speaker is another very brave, feisty, driven advocate who led the way, particularly on smoke-free flights. Patty Young, tell us the story.
Hi, everybody. I started flying as a stewardess in the summer of 1966, and I was just a few days into my 20th birthday. And the first trip I had, the stewardesses said to me, Patty, you're going to meet really interesting guys. You're going to go to beautiful places. Patty, I have the lungs of a smoker and I never smoked. And I was always listening, always kind of thinking about things like this as a little girl growing up. And I thought, okay, something's really rotten in the state of Denmark, as Shakespeare said. Something's really, really wrong. And I'm going to do something about that. My mom and dad both smoked, and 4 kids of us never smoked. We hated it. We had to take the names of all the passengers on every leg of every flight and where they were going and what they wanted to drink. So anytime I found somebody that had a doctor, he was a doctor or her, I would go up to them and ask them, what does it mean if you have the lungs of a smoker and you never smoked? And I had to come up with, something to kind of put it in another perspective. And I'd say to the doctors and scientists, if you have the lungs of a smoker and you never smoked, is it kind of like the dirt in my parents' backyard that grows beautiful plants that's just beautiful, or the dirt underneath an atomic bomb? They both look the same. They both feel the same. They both blow in the wind the same. What does it mean when you have it? And all of them said, well, I wouldn't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It's nothing. And I thought, well, that's a BS kind of a action towards me to say something like that. So we started dying of lung cancer, the non-smoking stewardesses, flight attendants at the age of 27, which means they only had 6 to 7 years exposure to the secondhand smoke. Also, I had 5 fires on my flights from smokers. I had to evacuate 3 hotels from fires in the hotels from smokers. So all of these things kind of added up to know what a danger this was. And I had never had a headache in my life living with parents who smoked. But yet when I started flying, I had migraine headaches within 2 months where I was vomiting with diarrhea, and they have never gone away. It's like the secondhand smoke did something permanently to my brain. And I deal with these migraines all the time, where I have to stay in bed for a couple of days, or if not longer. So every time I had a chance on the airplane, every flight, I would go up to passengers and tell them what we were going through as flight attendants, stewardesses, how sick we were getting. Our collars showed us that something was wrong, our white collars and our on the sleeves also, that would get dirty within about a 2-hour part of the flight, showing that there was a dark brown ring around the collar or the sleeve, showing what was going into us. My skin started stinging, and I didn't really wear much makeup at all. And what I would do is I would take a cloth or a tissue, pour vodka on it, and wipe my face off. And it started feeling beautiful immediately, but you could look at the cloth and see that it looked like I had just wiped up a tea spill or a bit of coffee. That's how much was on my skin immediately. Because when the ventilation system was working, it would pull the filthy smoke through the whole airplane. So it was kind of like a storm on the airplane all the time. I called it, actually, A&R is you guys got me on the Oprah Winfrey show the first time. And I called it rape. I used provocative words. A tea dialogue was not going to get you anywhere. I call it pulmonary rape. I call smoke on Oprah socially acceptable drug addicts who freebase their drugs anywhere they want. They never have to say a word to me as they blow it in my face. I'm the one that has to be verbal. You have to stop it. I will not put up with it. And when I said that in Congress, it was pretty provocative. And yet they knew I meant what I was saying, because I was just furious about how we were being dismissed as non-entities so the drug addicts could do their duty to God and their country by, being sick all the time. But my mom and dad, by the way, died of lung cancer. It's just been terrible. Absolutely. It's been a horrible fight. I used to the captains used to some of them kicked me out of my flights in the midst of them because they knew who I was and they wanted to get away from Dallas so they could kick me off in Buffalo in the middle of the night. So I'd have to find my way back home to my base of Dallas. Threats on the airplane. I mean, it was just incredible. The harassment was horrible. One time, an employee from American was smoking in the non-smoking. Well, there was no smoking in the airport. Billy Williamson and I got DFW smoke-free. And he was smoking. And I said, "Excuse me, this airport, I had to walk past him, is no smoking." And he tried to attack me immediately, screaming, calling me all the words you don't want to be called as a woman, trying to beat me up. And it took 3 people to hold him back, one on each arm, one around his body, and the other one trying to keep him as he was trying to get at me to beat me up, to be somebody to stop him in the middle of him trying to go for me. And Americans said to me, I was so upset about it. Americans said to me, if you can't handle it, you might want to find another job. And I'd say I'd have to be dead to stop this fight.
Patty, you are our hero for sure. You are wonderful.
Yeah.
We are so grateful to people like Patty who put herself on the line and stood up for flight attendants' rights to advocate for and to achieve a smoke-free work environment. If I recall the story correctly, we got a phone call from Patty one day saying, you know, you guys are doing great work, but what about me and my workplace? I'm in an airplane. And that began a partnership with Patty and many other flight attendants, predominantly working with those. I think that were on American and United Airlines. And it was a partnership with the grassroots approach, working with the worker-led movement, with the flight attendants, with ANR members as people who travel and go on flights, wanting smoke-free airlines, and then, of course, lobbying at the federal level. So we would not be here today enjoying smoke-free skies if it weren't for people, flight attendants like Patty Young and others. Well, looking forward and looking at another group of workers are musicians. I had mentioned earlier that over the years, we've worked on a couple of campaigns focused on collaborations with musicians, and we're very grateful to have Jamie Kent with us today from Nashville. And so, Jamie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Cynthia. Thank you to Ann and Patty for your pioneering work that continues to inspire us. It's an honor to be here talking a bit today and get to share a video. I'm a singer-songwriter based in Nashville, and I also own an advocacy agency called the BAM Group. And back in 2020, during the pandemic, when we were all out of work, I got to meet A&R and learn about their amazing work on smoke-free music cities and the accomplishments they had in Austin, in New Orleans, in Atlanta, in making music venues go smoke-free. And as an artist that's battled asthma and that had just lost a family member who was a lifetime smoker to COPD, it really resonated with me at the time. And I thought, you know what, we need to be doing this in Nashville. And A&R came right to the table and helped educate me, helped show me the path. And they were founding members of the Musicians for a Smoke-Free Nashville Coalition that got off the ground and grew from just a few of us to over 100 members in a year. We realized we had to repeal preemption or part of it at the state level in order for cities like Nashville to enact stronger smoke-free laws. And we were able to do that. I could go into so much detail, but we had a video. We had the honor of producing a video in collaboration with A&R and City Health. We're going to premiere it, preview it here for y'all right now. And I think that can give a better description of the process. But I'm just so grateful for A&R. If it weren't for them, I can promise you venues and bars in Nashville would still have smoke in them. So let me share this video here and give you guys the full story.
On March 1st, 2023, over 50 bars and venues went smoke-free. This is the story of a smoke-free Nashville.
There was one time where I got asked to play a writer's round. I'd never been to this bar before, and I got there and I opened the door and the ray of light came in and there's smoke everywhere. I have asthma and there's no way I can even last playing an hour in a smoke-filled bar.
Would cause me to lose my voice, would cause my merch to smell like cigarettes.
Not only do the patrons need to be protected from the smoke, but the people who worked in the bars needed to be protected because they're in there many, many hours.
Or doing things that affect your health directly or indirectly, that's violating your rights as a human.
I don't think musicians should have to endure that in order to make it in a city.
In 2020, Musicians for a Smoke-Free Nashville was born with the goal of eliminating smoking inside music venues and bars in the Nashville area.
So we still had venues that were allowing smoking.
And said, you know what, we can't do anything in Nashville yet, but if you get that state law changed, come back to us and we will work to make it happen in Nashville. And that's exactly what we did.
We have a lot of musicians all throughout the city. We also have a lot of tourists that come in, and we want to make sure that we're keeping our musicians healthy as well as welcoming people from everywhere and not literally poisoning the air.
And this coalition grew so fast. I think we went from 3 members to 100 in the first year.
So once the legislation at the state level passed and allowed us to be able to implement local legislation, I moved quickly.
It was so cool to see the amazing support develop in Nashville with 11 council members signing on.
I first saw Smokefree Nashville on the news, actually, and I immediately went and messaged them and said, how can I get involved?
Well, in my life, I have lost some very significant people to tobacco use.
My dad was a smoker, so I felt some empathy for musicians that were dealing kind of with the same thing, that you needed to have a space where you could perform and earn money and, follow your dreams.
Well, clean air is very important to me. I live in Madison, which is one of the highest asthma rates in the city. I have asthma myself.
I've personally been affected by this issue, and I wanted to help end smoking in bars in Nashville.
The discussion was very collaborative. It was very productive. It was literally a breath of fresh air.
And gosh, that was one of the greatest feelings and things to see that I've ever experienced.
Being able to pass things like the no smoking ordinance really makes a huge difference in the quality of life and the ability to work for musicians and hospitality workers.
The data showed that we were right, and I believe that it's already showing that it is working to the benefit of all our musicians, hospitality workers, and those clubs.
Some months after we passed the smoke-free law, we learned that Nashville had received a silver medal from the City Health, who awards medals to cities across the country for taking steps to improve public health.
So this award is very special.
Those kinds of awards based on public health initiatives, I think, are important.
They're getting recognition for good legislation feels really good. And I hope it's an example to other areas what can be done.
I hope that this award helps highlight that you too can pass this in your city.
I would love to see, the rest of the state, the rest of the country follow suit.
You will be the hero. You will be the hero of the business owners because now they're all on a level playing field. You'll be the hero of the people who are consuming the products of these bars because they can go anywhere. You will be the hero of the little working bars because now they can feel safe.
We are Music City. We are Music State here in Tennessee, and we can come together around supporting our community.
I think this is just one more way of saying, hey, let's be good to each other. Let's be good to ourselves. Let's live good lives and make this country the best it can be and make our city the best it can be.
All right, so that's the story of Smoke-Free Nashville, and like I said, it wouldn't be possible without the amazing support of A&R from the beginning in Smoke-Free Music Cities, leading us and showing us the way. And as you heard at the end of that, the work still goes on. The fight still goes on. We passed the law in Nashville. The next year we passed a law in Hendersonville, a surrounding community, and we continue to push forward in Tennessee now that that area of preemption has been repealed to try to bring these ordinances to Memphis, to Knoxville, to Murfreesboro, to Chattanooga, to Gallatin. There is energy happening. The momentum is still building. The work and fights still go on, and we are so honored and excited to carry this torch and work with A&R on this. I know it's harder for them to say than it can be maybe for me, but this work is long. It requires patience. It requires coalition building and media and lobbyists and all sorts of things. So if there's anybody writing checks on this call, I'm going to say support A&R, write them some checks. Let's keep this work going so that we can, I can tell you that in Nashville, this law has impacted my friends' lives in a positive way. They can now go to work and not have to worry about whether they have to choose between their health or a paycheck. And that is such a relief to our music community here. And I hope that everybody else in Tennessee soon gets to experience that. And if we can help and lend advice anywhere else, please consider us an ally in this fight. And thanks again to A&R for having me. I will pass the mic on, but so grateful for everything you do and for including me in that journey.
Thank you, Jamie. Always a pleasure to work with you, and we're looking forward to some more action in Tennessee. Well, next we're going to hear from, again, sort of transitioning even more into what are we doing now this year in 2025 and in going forward. And we're going to hear from Joe Hafley, who is a casino worker in Kansas. Joe, you want to share your story?
Hi, I'm Joe Hafley. I'm the founder and leader of CS Kansas and Missouri. I joined the movement in December of 2022 after contacting a New Jersey group. They asked me if I want to start CS Kansas, and I agreed to it. And In last 2023, started Cease, Missouri. There's a bill in the Senate right now in Kansas. We're waiting for a hearing. Same thing in Missouri. If not, we'll fight back again next year. We have everything the way we want it on the law for the bill, so it'll get pre-filed. It'll be even quicker next year if it doesn't go through this year. I've had lots of improvements this year because media has been wanting to cover it more. And I've also had guests come up to me saying they hope it passes and goes through. I've also had coworkers thanking me for what I'm doing. The future, like I said, next year, we're going to make it go through if it doesn't go through this year at all, but we'll keep fighting each and every year until it does. And the lawmakers know that. I've said on TV interviews. And thanks for having me on. That's about all I have to cover right now. But as for dealing with it at work, there's times where I walk through the casino. I don't know when somebody's smoking. So I walk by them, then breathe it all in. I absolutely hate that. Even on cigars, those are the worst of it. There's times I'm at the door and they'll smoke within like 15, 20 feet from me. They say ventilation systems work, but I'm still smelling at the door, even though they're over 20 feet away from me. So the ventilation systems do not work. That's why employees keep getting sick over and over. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Joe. Joe is too modest to share that he, again, is an example of how one individual can be a spark plug and get a movement going in a place where really activity had been slow. It had kind of plateaued. And Joe has talked to casino players, his fellow workers. He's talked to media. He's done outreach to legislators in Kansas and in Missouri. And it's just, that energy that is driven from, this tragedy of having to be exposed to secondhand smoke in the workplace really brings other people in. So he's also that magnet that's bringing folks along with him. And we're so proud to be able to work with you. It's unfortunate that these fights are so long. We've got all of the evidence. We know the facts. We have a track record of how we know that smoke-free laws work, that they're good for health and good for business. But we still have to go through the process. So, Joe, I appreciate how hard you've been working on this and for your perseverance. And similarly for our casino workers, we've got some on with us today from New Jersey, from Pennsylvania, from other states, from Rhode Island, who are here and going through the same fight. So it is frustrating, but we're going to stand strong. We're going to work together, and we're not going to step back, because if Ann can make it happen and Patty can make it happen, together we're going to make this happen for these casinos as well. So keep on the good fight, and we're there with you. So in addition to workplaces, A&R also has provided a lot of assistance to people living in multi-unit housing, whether it's an apartment, condominium, townhouse, whatever it may be. And really for decades, I joined A&R in 1997. And I think our top request for technical assistance has been around unwanted secondhand smoke exposure in apartments. And so today we have Cindy Curran joining us to share her story. Thanks, Cindy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me. My name is Cindy Curran. I lived in Rhode Island, as she said, and having a huge problem with the smoking, obviously. We've had multiple people who have died, at least 5 or 6 years. I live on Section 8, so I'm handicapped. It happens to be the highest demographics that smoke. So over the years, I've been here about 20 years or so, a little over. And we've had about over the years, 6 people who have died from their smoking. They made it a federal law not to smoke. They continue to smoke. I sent pictures of the heaviest smoker. She started having health problems from her smoking in her 40s. She's dying from lung cancer. And she still smokes. Her windows, I sent a picture, her windows are black from the smoking. I have called the health department, I have called HUD, I have called the media, I have a petition out. I've called everybody that I can think of, HUD. I even called the of course, I talked to management first, but I also talked to the headquarters of my apartment building, and everybody directs it right back to the managers. They said their hands are tied. I'm worried about my health, and I want to do something about this before my health breaks down. The lady below me, she would smoke like a chimney so bad. I would go to bed at night with burning eyes. My nose would be burning. Even the back of my throat would be burning. I had trouble sleeping. I would feel nauseous. I would have to leave my apartment just to take a break from it. I am concerned about my health, and their answer individually, not at the same time, but and basically I've been told more than once, well, you're gonna die from something. And I said, that's not the point. You shouldn't have the right to dictate how I am going to die. Management says their hands are tied because if they take them to court, the judge just says, oh, did you catch them smoking in their apartment? Which would be no. And then the judge will dismiss the case. It's like teary-eyed listening to everybody's stories because it's so heartfelt. This is very emotional for me. I was getting a lot of pot in my apartment. And I had a rabbit. I tried to get him a home. I couldn't find him a home in time, and he died. So he died. I got asthma. I have to take an inhaler. So far, I've been on it for about 9 months. So far, I've only had to use my inhaler while I'm in my apartment. I've had pleurisy twice. The first time I was hospitalized, and for people who don't know what pleurisy is, that's inflamed lung. The other non-smokers don't want to get involved because they don't want to make waves with the neighbors. So I am very concerned about my health. My health is getting worse because of the smoke. I don't have the money to move. They said they would move me, but there's no guarantee. So that's my story. So thank you for listening to me.
Cindy, thank you so much for sharing. And I'm so sorry that this is your situation. I unfortunately have to say that many people who are calling us from their apartments are dealing with similar, just heartbreaking, heart-wrenching stories. And, we do have some information that's available. There are some strategies we have found to be effective, but again, it is just unconscionable that the way that we need to keep fighting for our right for a smoke-free environment, whether it's a workplace or where you're living, is to just be persistent. We have got to be those squeaky wheels. I mean, for what it's worth, non-smokers are the majority of the population. And so whether it's a casino that claims that, they need to accommodate smokers, well, they're accommodating the minority of people who smoke, similarly in smoke-free housing. There are strategies that I think we could use. I'm so sorry you're in this situation, and A&R will continue to do its best to develop resources and share other stories. For instance, right now there's about 101 California communities that have a smoke-free multi-unit housing law, and we're working diligently to try to expand that, not only in California, but certainly throughout. So thanks again for joining us and sharing your story. But these stories are important, and these are the real people that A&R gets calls from every day, the people that we work with on the regular basis to work on campaigns, again, whether it is in a casino or a music venue, or believe it or not, there are still workplaces, restaurants, and bars where smoking is still permitted. And so our mission is to make sure that we clear the air so that everyone has the privilege and right to breathe smoke-free indoor air. Our commitment has always been focused on protecting individuals who are unfairly exposed to secondhand smoke, whether they are at work, where they live, or where they seek services and entertainment. We're grateful to all of you, our members, our donors, our colleagues, those who support our work with your financial support and your engagement when called to take action. While we still firmly believe that local laws lead the way, there are significant opportunities in several states, as I mentioned earlier. The reality is that statewide campaigns take longer and require more financial assistance. But together, we can reach our smoke-free goals and be successful with these campaigns. So I thank you for joining us today for our Day of Breathing and the celebration of A&R's anniversary. We are committed again to clearing the air for everyone and protecting non-smokers' rights to breathe smoke-free air. We are grateful to our partners. We're grateful to our research partners, some who are in the room today, who did some of the original research looking at the economic impact of smoke-free restaurant laws. Thank you, Stan Glantz, and to others in the room who have just been part of this movement. I am so grateful and proud to be able to work with this advocacy organization and the people in this room, whether it's our virtual room or in the building. Thank you so much. We look forward to more smoke-free successes this year. And we invite you can stay on the line and kind of chat with one another in the chat box. I've only seen bits of it along the way. I love the engagement. That's who we are. This is how we interact with one another. Thank you. Have a wonderful day. On behalf of everybody, the board of directors, the staff, and our consultants at Americans for Non-Smokers' Rights, I thank you, and I look forward to working with you.